a few days since the passing of former Toronto Mayor Rob Ford. Yes, the news was shocking. Yes, he had been diagnosed with a cruel form of cancer and wasn't responding to treatment. But I always thought that if anyone could beat insurmountable odds, it would be Rob Ford. In fact, I don't even think his enemies were betting against him. Speaking of enemies, it was a bit much to witness members of the media party and the progressives dash to microphones upon Rob's demise, saying how much they'd all miss Rob and how this was a sad, sad time for Toronto. Anyone buying that? It was akin to having the pitchfork wielding villagers at the end of Frankenstein passing along their condolences to Frankie once the windmill had gone up in flames, which is to say that when the likes of Kathleen Wynne and Justin Trudeau and so many members of the left wing media, those journalists who shamelessly hounded Rob in life, my hunch is that their words of condolence are insincere, their tears are of the crocodilian variety. Now, full disclosure, I was always a Rob Ford supporter. I first met him a few years before he became mayor. He was a city councillor at the time, but I was intrigued by his second passion, that of being a football coach for a high school. So I spent the day with Rob to write a newspaper feature. I was drawn to Rob thanks to his weekly radio segments on AM 640. Each Thursday morning, Rob would shed a spotlight on the grotesque spending of taxpayer dollars down at City Hall. Here's just one example. Rob exposed a $25,000 pilot project that aimed to teach homeless people how to, wait for it, stilt walk. Yes, stilt walk, just in case Cirque du Soleil comes calling, I suppose. In any event, the football game involved Rob's beloved Don Bosco Eagles. The score was secondary, for the real story of the Don Bosco Eagles was one of hope and second chances. Rob donated some $40,000 of his own money to resurrect the dormant football program. And imagine that, folks, a politician spending his own money, not yours. Rob told me he revived the program because he wanted to give Don Bosco students, several of whom didn't have fathers in their lives, something to aspire to other than hanging around the mall or turning to crime. I remember some of the mothers at the game telling me that had it not been for Rob Ford, their sons would either be in jail or dead. I've chosen to dwell on the football program because Rob was happiest when he was out on the gridiron with the kids, and yet the Rob Ford witch hunt kicked into overdrive because Rob had the temerity to raise $3,500 using official City of Toronto letterhead. Oh, what a scandal, eh? Still in swept Paul Magdar and his high-priced lawyer, Clayton Ruby, who sought to remove Rob from office by court order. Meanwhile, Magdar and Ruby's accomplices in the media party were all too happy to join the feeding frenzy, actually staking out Rob's personal residence. If you examine the chronology, it was around this time that the pressure really got to Rob and that he began to succumb to his personal demons. A new benchmark for journalism was set in Toronto during this time too. Indeed, the media mob scene became nasty and personal. The Toronto Star, for example, thought it was front page news that Rob had visited a Kentucky Fried Chicken outlet while he was on his diet. Oh, Woodward and Bernstein, eat your heart out. Now Magazine actually published a Photoshop picture of Rob's head affixed to the body of a naked obese man. Now ran the image on the cover, and as a two-page spread, it was juvenile, it was vulgar. Yet, what was the relevance in portraying Rob Ford as naked? There was none, of course. The double standard was appalling. Apparently, it was fair game to mock a politician for being fat, yet would the Star or Now ever dream of mocking a candidate for being, gay or black or Muslim or disabled? And isn't it odd how these investigative journalists are not camping outside Premier Wynn's and Dalton McGuinty's homes seeking answers for a multitude of billion-dollar scandals under their watch? No, nothing to see here, folks. Move along, move along. Still, there was an unspoken strategy behind the spite. Rob Ford represented the common man, and his brilliant election slogan, respect for taxpayers, wasn't a hollow promise. Unlike the current progressive posses at Queen's Park and the House of Commons, Rob didn't look upon hardworking taxpayers as so many cows to be milked by an endless array of taxes, levies, fees, and revenue tools. Unlike the elitist Rob didn't rubber stamp projects that were fiscal sinkholes, he stood up to the unions and the bureaucracy, and he delivered on his pledges. That's why he won by a landslide in 2010. Although it's true there will never be another Rob Ford, it's also true there will always be an appetite for a courageous politician who embraces the respect for taxpayers mantra of Rob Ford. And this will ultimately prove to be Rob's everlasting legacy. Rest in peace, Mayor. For the Rebel Media, I'm David the Menzoid Menzies.